Hey gang, and welcome back. These videos are brought to you by Card Conduit, the best place to sell your unused collection fast and easily. 401 Games, Canada's top shop for all your hobby and TCG needs. Dragon Shield, the strongest sleeves for your strongest decks. Moxfield, the easiest way to store and share your deck lists. And Foil Armor, flatten your foils fast. Chris wins the die roll, starting us off. He draws, plays a Plains, and casts Thraben Inspector, making a clue token as it comes in. Morgan's turn has him playing a Plains as well, and casting an Icathian Money Changer. He takes 3 as it enters, and passes. Chloe draws and plays an island. Ben just plays a Tap-Sheltered Thicket. Chris plays a Plains, and moving to combat, attacks Chloe for 1. In his upkeep, Morgan takes up his Money Changer, then draws and plays a Dragonskull Summit, passing. Chloe's turn has her playing an island and casting Master of the Pearl Trident. Ben plays Lair of the Hydra and pays 2 for a Farseek. He goes to find a Canyon Slough, and during the end step, Chris flashes in Phelia. Chris draws and casts Night of the White Orchid, going to find a Plains off of it because of Ben. He then plays a Guildless Commons, bouncing a Plains back to hand. Going to combat, he swings Phelia at Ben and the Thraben Inspector at Morgan. Chris then flickers the Inspector with Phelia's on attack, and Ben takes 2. With the Thraben Inspector re-entering, Chris gets another clue token and passes turn. Morgan sacrifices the Money Changer to gain 5 on his upkeep, and draws. He plays a Shattered Sanctum, and then casts Licia. He then activates her ability, paying 5 life to put 3+1/+1 counters onto her, and passes. Chloe plays a forest, and then casts Emperor Mihail II. She ships it after it resolves. Ben's got a Blast Zone, and then enough mana to cast Hearthhull, and passes. Chris draws and casts the monocolored All-Star Endless Atlas, and then swings Phelia at Ben. He exiles the Night of the White Orchid, and Ben takes the hit for 3. And with Chris bringing the knight back, he gets to go and find another Plains, and passes. Morgan draws, playing a Sundown Pass, and then swings Licia at Chris. Chris blocks with a Thraben Inspector, and before damage, Morgan pays 5 life to pump Licia. They connect, with Morgan gaining 10 life. After combat, Morgan then casts a Talisman of Conviction, and then a Keen Duelist. Chloe draws, playing an island for turn, and casting Marrow Harbinger off the top. She gets to tutor for a Merfolk, putting Seviloon of the Sea on top. And then moving to combat, swings Mihail at Morgan for 4. He takes the hit, and Chloe passes. Ben's main phase has him casting Mightform Harmonizer, and he plays a Misty Rainforest, and doubles the Harmonizer's power. He then stations the Hearthhull for 8 thanks to the Harmonizer, and swings it at Chris. Before damage, Ben cracks the Misty Rainforest, dealing 2 from the Hearthhull trigger to each opponent, and goes to find a forest. As the forest comes in, the Harmonizer doubles Hearthhull's power. In response to the landfall trigger, Chris activates the Endless Atlas, but can't find an answer and takes 12. After combat, Ben then sacrifices his forest to Hearthhull, drawing 2 and dealing 2 to his enemies. He doesn't have an extra land to play though, and he just passes. Chris draws and casts a Static Prison in his main phase, exiling the Mightform Harmonizer. He then plays a Minas Tirith, and swings Phelia at Ben. This has Chris flickering at Hearthhull with the attack trigger, and Ben then takes the hit for 4. In his post-combat main phase, Chris then plays Rumor Gatherer, and passes. And Hearthhull comes back, but with no crew counters on it. Morgan targets Chloe with the Keen Duelist, and she reveals Seviloon, while Morgan reveals a Smothering Tithe, and they each take the damage for each other's cards. He then draws her turn, and plays an Isolated Chapel, following up by casting Smothering Tithe. With that on the stack, Chris activates Endless Atlas, but finds no answer and it resolves. Morgan then puts 3 more counters onto Licia, and swings her at Ben. Ben takes the hit for 13, with Morgan gaining 13 and passing. Chloe draws and doesn't pay for the tithe, and casts Hakbal and goes to combat. All of her merfolk explore, and Chloe gets a Temple of Mystery, and then keeps Reality Shift on top, putting +1/+1 counters onto the rest of her merfolk. She then swings Mihail at Chris for 4, who takes the hit, and Chloe passes. Ben's turn has him drawing, and quickly main phase casting a Blasphemous Act to wipe the board. Once it's resolved, he casts Tireless Tracker, and then taps the tracker to station the Hearthhull for 3. Ben then passes turn. Chris pays an energy to keep Static Prison around, and draws. He activates the Endless Atlas, drawing again, and then plays a Monumental Henge. Morgan's turn has him drawing and casting a Rock's Faithmender. He follows up with Markov Purifier and ships it. Chloe draws and pays for the Smothering Tithe, and then casts a Cultivate. She goes to find a forest for the field and an island to her hand. Ben draws, casting a Kicked Sprouting Goblin, which gets him a forest that he plays for turn. This gets him a clue token from the Tireless Tracker. Ben then follows up with an Aftermath Analyst, milling some cards. After that, Ben stations Hearthhull back up to 8 counters, and swings it at Morgan. Morgan takes the hit for 6, and Ben passes, while Chris activates his Monumental Henge during the end step, revealing the Grey Havens off of it. Chris pays another energy, keeping the prison around, and draws. He plays the Grey Havens, scrying 1. He follows up with the Angel of Ruins. As it comes in, he exiles Smothering Tithe and Hearthhull, and ships the turn. Morgan's main phase has him drawing and going straight to combat, swinging both creatures at Chloe for 3. She takes the hit, and Morgan gains 6 life, which in turn discounts Licia's cost in his second main phase to allow him to cast her for 4. He then activates her, paying 5 life to pump Licia, and passes. Chloe draws her turn, casting Seviloon, and follows her up with a Merfolk Sovereign. She then passes turn. Ben's got a Corvold in his main phase, which as it enters, sacrifices a clue token, draws him a card, and gives Corvold a +1/+1 counter. He passes after that. Chris's upkeep has him losing Static Prison since he can't pay the energy, and he gives Ben back his Mightform Harvester. He then draws for turn. He then activates the Endless Atlas, drawing again, and plays a Plains, and passes. During the end step, Morgan casts Show-Stopping Surprise and targets Licia. This has Chloe responding by casting Into the Floodmaw and targets Licia to bounce her, and fizzle the spell. We then move to Morgan's turn. Morgan's turn has him playing a Spectator Seeding, and then casting Exquisite Blood. He swings both of his creatures at Chloe, and Chloe double blocks the Faithmender, but takes 2 from the Purifier. After combat, Morgan then recasts Licia, activates her paying 5 life, and passes. Chloe's land for turn is a Yavimaya Coast, and she casts Song of the Dryads targeting Exquisite Blood. She then sends Seviloon at Morgan, and he blocks with Licia. Chloe in turn flashes in Singer of the Swift Rivers and puts a shield counter onto the Merfolk Sovereign, and Seviloon becomes indestructible. Morgan then gains 7 life from Licia's lifelink though, and Chloe passes. Ben's main phase has a Cabaretti Courtyard coming in, and he sacrifices it, gaining 1 life to go and find a land. This has Ben drawing off of Corvold, making a total of 2 clues, gets a mountain, and doubles the power of Corvold twice with the Harvester to a total of 24. Ben then continues his turn by casting Escape to the Wilds, and he plays a Cinder Glades as his second land drop, doubling Corvold's power to 48. Going to combat, Ben swings Corvold at Morgan, and sacrifices a clue to the attack trigger, getting a counter and drawing a card. Morgan gets taken out in 1 swing. After that, Ben passes, and Chris cracks a clue on the end step, drawing a card, and then activates the Monumental Henge, but whiffs. Chris draws and activates the Endless Atlas, drawing again, and casts a Solemn Simulacrum in his main phase to go and find a Plains. He follows it up by casting Esper Sentinel, and Ben responds to the spell, casting Nature's Claim to destroy the Angel of Ruins. Chris gains some life, and the Sentinel then resolves, and Chris passes turn. Chloe draws and casts Deep Root Pilgrimage, and doesn't pay for the Esper Sentinel trigger. Chloe then goes to combat, swinging Sevelun at Ben. He takes the hit for 3, and Chloe gets to make a merfolk and passes. Ben's turn has him playing a Fabled Passage, and targets Corvold with the Harmonizer trigger and holds priority. Responding to his own trigger, Ben cracks the Fabled Passage, putting another counter onto Corvold and drawing a card, and this time puts the Harmonizer trigger on the Tireless Tracker. Ben then doubles the Tireless Tracker power, and then doubles Corvold's power as well. Ben then floats 4 mana, and casts Scape Shift, paying 1 for the Esper Sentinel. This has Chloe responding by casting Reality Shift and targeting the Harmonizer. Ben then sacrifices all of his lands to Scape Shift, drawing 8 cards off of Corvold and puts 8 more counters onto it. And exiles Chloe's graveyard with the Bojuka Bog that he finds. Ben also makes 10 clue tokens, and uses his floating mana to help cast Azusa, Lost But Seeking. He then plays 2 lands from exile. Going to combat, Ben sends Corvold at Chloe, and the Goblin and Tireless Tracker at Chris. Ben then sacrifices a clue token to Corvold's trigger, and then pays to sacrifice another clue, pumping Corvold up to a total of 26 power, which is enough to take Chloe out. Chris then chumps the Tireless Tracker with his Solemn Simulacrum, drawing as it hits the graveyard. Ben then passes turn, and Chris cracks a clue. Chris draws and plays a Parting Gust and targets the Esper Sentinel. He then casts Ondu Inversion. The board is then wiped, and Chris gets back the Esper Sentinel. Ben just draws and casts Morag, and then an Ignoble Hierarch, and takes 1 off the Sulphurous Springs. He ships it after that. Chris's main phase has him casting Palace Jailer, becoming the Monarch as it comes in, and exiling Morag. He follows up with an Archaeomancer's Map, going to find 2 planes, and plays 1 for turn. He then passes, drawing from being the Monarch. Ben's first main phase has Tanuk Memorial Ensign coming in, and he follows it up with Spitfire Lagak. Ben then cracks his Bloodstained Mire, going to find a Vernal Fen, and deals 2 to Chris as it comes in. He then cracks his Arid Mesa for a Mountain, and deals another 2, plus draws off Tanuk. Ben then continues by casting Crucible of Worlds, and plays Smothering Marsh from his graveyard, and deals another 2 to Chris. Ben then passes, with Chris flashing in Phelia during the end step. Chris casts a Coveted Jewel, drawing 3 as it comes in. He then plays a Plains, and casts the Eternal Wanderer. He then downticks her, and chooses Phelia, and then the Ignoble Hierarch. Going to combat, Chris swings Phelia at Ben, and targets the Coveted Jewel with the trigger, but Ben responds with a Tear Asunder to exile it. Chris then responds to this by channeling Touch the Spirit Realm, and flickers the jewel, and Ben then takes the hit for 2. Chris brings back the Coveted Jewel on his end step, drawing 3. Ben draws and swings the Ignoble Hierarch at Chris, getting the Exalted trigger, and Chris takes 1. This has Chris losing both the Monarchy and the Coveted Jewel, and Ben draws 3 and gets Morag back. He then casts Hearthhull in his second main phase. With Ben's commander on the stack, Chris responds with the Swords to Plowshares on Morag, and it gets exiled, gaining Ben some life. Hearthhull then resolves, and Chris continues by casting Titania, getting a Cinder Glade and dealing 2 to Chris. Ben then plays a Forest, dealing 2 more, and Chris puts Emeria into play off the Archaeomancer's Map. Once that's out, Ben then casts Planetary Annihilation. Everyone sacrifices down to 6 lands, and Ben makes 7 elemental tokens and 2 insect tokens from his lands. Ben then stations Hearthhull with 2 elementals, and stations up a Vendo with 2 elementals as well, and 2 insects, and passes turn. Chris draws and plays a Flooded Strand, and casts a Reverent Hoplite. He then upticks the Eternal Wanderer, targeting the Coveted Jewel, and passes. During the end step, he gets back the Jewel and draws 3. Ben draws, casting Sylvan Safekeeper, which prompts Chris to respond with an Unexplained Absence. He targets Hearthhull and Coveted Jewel with it. And once the Safekeeper resolves, Ben casts a Splendid Reclamation. With the Cabaret Courtyard coming back in, Ben then sacrifices it and gains 1, but doesn't have a land to find with it. He then follows up by casting Mayhem Devil, and then sacrifices 21 lands to take out Chris with the Mayhem Devil triggers. Game review time. I love a game when everyone casts their commanders and essentially gets to do what they want to do, at least a little bit of the game. In this case, Hakbal got to explore and cast merfolk, so Chloe was doing her thing. Licia was gaining life and smashing face. Hearthhull is just always a problem, but at least Ben had to really work for it this game. I'd say for me the underdog of this game, pause for laughter, was probably Phelia, and I had very low expectations of her when it came in, but Chris really held his own. Between a decent amount of interaction, not to mention a good amount of draw in mono white, his deck seemed to go really well. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, but it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.